As you probably know, everything is getting a lot more expensive. Inflation has pretty much hit everything, and that includes just about everything that you'll find here in Las Vegas. Hotels, the nightclubs, the drinks, they've all gotten a lot more expensive. So, of course, it would make sense that probably the hookers are more expensive as well. So, if you're curious how much a hooker costs in this town in 2026, here's your answer. Now, there's a couple different ways you can get a hooker here in town. There's basically two main ways. The first is to use an escort review site. This is probably the best way, and it's also the way that has the least amount of risk. On these sites, you can find a pretty good variety of hookers, and they'll typically cost you at the very low end around 300 an hour. However, that's becoming harder and harder to find in 2026. So you'll probably want to anticipate closer to between 400 and 600 an hour. However, if you do go this route, you can end up paying a little bit more. However, that's the trade off for having a little bit less risk. However, you still need to be careful because there are still some scammers and hustlers that operate on these review sites. The next most popular option for finding a hooker in Las Vegas is to pick up a casino walker. These are basically prostitutes that walk around the casino, and you can pick them up and you can spot them pretty easily. Now, these girls are a little bit higher risk because a lot of them just kind of scam you. So this is definitely higher risk. As far as the price, here's where it gets a little hard to nail down. These types of hookers will usually start kind of high. So when you first talk to them, they may start around 1,000 an hour, but they will come down. How far they come down is where it can vary, but it's not unusual that they'll come down to around 500 or so. So with those kinds of girls, there is definitely more of a haggling. So keep that in mind. There are a few other ways you can find prostitutes here in Las Vegas. The other one that probably most people have heard of are the brothels. Those are a few hours outside of Las Vegas, so they're not like here in town. And also, they're a lot more expensive. Probably the cheapest you can get there is going to be around 2,500. And also, you don't have a good choice between the girls there. At least in my experience, the girls at the brothels are usually the ones who have kind of spent a lot of time in the business, and now they just want to kind of chill in like a brothel. So it's you're gonna have a hard time trying to find the more younger ones that are like early 20s. Overall, I don't really recommend the brothels. However, because they are 100% legal, that is the least amount of risk. So there's pretty much no chance of getting scammed, although you will pay a lot more. You won't get scammed or robbed and uh, that kind of thing. So it is extremely low risk. However, the choice in the girls isn't that great and it's very expensive. Now, as a kind of a last resort, there are the streetwalker type of a hooker that can be found on Tropicana here. And those you can sometimes get for a little bit less. So you can sometimes get like a quickie for like 150 or so. However, that is like a very high risk, and also that's usually where the locals go or truck drivers who are kind of passing through. So it's not really for tourists who kind of want a more fun experience. Um, However, if that's your thing, that is a place where you can find streetwalkers. So overall, if you want a decent hooker in this town in 2026, expect at the very low end, you might be able to still get one for around 300, and a more normal price is going to be somewhere between 600 and a thousand at the very high end. However, if you do pay that 600 and up, you do get a very quality girl that's gonna that she's probably going to be very professional. She's going to be on time, she's going to be hot, So, it is always the case of you do get what you pay for. So, anyways, I hope this helps. And if you like this kind of information, make sure to check out my site where I do go into a lot more detail. It's truevegaslife.com. Thanks.